All right, excellent job with the video there. Got it. Very cool. So I'm gonna try. I like the sound of these two new things. Hope you do too. I'm actually gonna use a bit of key changes here. So we're doing a very Aeolian sound here, the key of E minor, and then we're gonna move it to the key of G minor. Basically gonna be. I also view this as fairly chromatic because you're just taking a pattern and shifting it up somewhere else. But this is also just the key change. Key of E minor to G minor. So the rhythm you're, I believe, quite familiar with now. So I just want to see how well you can control this as you work it up. And yeah, just remember, keep it under control. No pushing the speed past any point of being comfortable in terms of knowing whether you are on or not. And then this one, it pushes things a bit further because the downbeat for the downbeat of 1 for the second and fourth bar are gone. But same idea, we're going to be playing this in A minor. And then we repeat the pattern up in C minor. So I've been kind of fiddling with key change stuff lately, and they just sound really neat. So let's try that this week. Okay, and theory, perfect. Everything's perfect. So yeah, the Google document worked out just fine. Okay, so 60 beats per minute, number 1. And before applying the rhythm, good idea, get comfortable with what the chord progression is. So it's really basing it off of an E5 chord and then a G5 chord, but we're changing the top note. So creating a kind of a melody with this. Once you get comfortable with the fingers for the chords, then it's time to add the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4. One, 160 next. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 200. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's demonstrate some repeats at this speed. That's pretty fast for this kind of rhythm. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. That was awful. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, number 2. So just like number 1, good idea, get familiar with what the chord progression is. So we got this. So let's see, what's a way to describe this? So basically, got the 7 there, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8. And like right here, it's like going 5, 7, 8, 7, 5. So when you get to that part, I'm thinking of it like you're just kind of going up and right back down, and then the starting chord again, and then shift up to the C5 and do the same pattern. So if we look at it finger-wise, we have ring finger, pinky, and then first, third, pinky, third, first, back to the start. Here we go. 60. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bad start. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. I played that wrong. Take 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. I am not doing well. I hit too many strings. Take 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. There. All right, 120. 1, 2, 3, 4. 160. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 200. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try it with some repeats. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breath holder. Gotta hold the breath to make it through that. Holy crap. Anyway, chords. All right. So now that we went through and you got all those notes named properly for the chords, let's put them back into some clean chords. So the idea here, we have 3 spaces for the chords in each bar. And the top part of this is currently cut off. Hold on. Change it to this, this, and this. There we go. Okay. So, like it says up here, triads, sus2, sus4. So, the first part here, we're going to use your basic major, minor, or diminished chord. And we're talking like your open stuff, the big cowboy chords, or sometimes the bar chords, your movable shapes, whatever you need those. And then what you're going to do, you take the triad chord you put in there, and then you're going to turn it into the appropriate suspended second, and then the appropriate suspended 4. So, let's see. I know we've done a little bit before. Basically, we did this before earlier, I think, maybe. Not really sure. So, what I'm going to do here is like kind of demonstrate how I work through it. And then I'm going to erase it so you get the blank one. But so this way you have like an idea of what we're going to do here, okay? So, key of C to start. We know it's the key of C because there are no sharps or flats over here. We got one sharp down here, which tells us that's the key of G, because the key of G has one F sharp. And then down here we see one flat, key of F, which is B, has the B flat. So we also have the mode information above each bar. And these are things important to pay attention to, because when we start memorizing what's in the mode, it makes remembering or being able to understand what chords can happen in each mode a lot easier to do. Same thing with like making riffs and using arpeggios or making something sound like a specific mode whenever you want it to. And also, when it comes to those suspended chords, remember, not everything can be a sus2 or a sus4. The places to pay attention to are Phrygian, that has a sus flat 2. Lydian has a sus sharp 4. And then Locrian has a sus flat 2 flat 5 and a sus 4 flat 5. So, remembering where the oddballs are, I think, is the way to go, because there are far fewer weird ones to remember versus the regular, because everything else is normal. Everything else is regular. Phrygian's got a weird one. Lydian's got a weird one. Locrian's got 2 weirdos. So, for the Ionian here, let's go back to the bigger version. My mouse will let me. There. Alright, so first thing we do, put in the chord, make sure you label it. So with the C, the first thing to do, because we're just working on chords that happen in key, we just look for the third interval, and we're going to lower that down first. So C note stays the same. And we also want to do it on the guitar as well. So when you're doing this, make sure you also play everything, because one common mistake people make, they'll just change what's on the guitar profile without actually playing the chords, which is, and it's not good, because we need to hear and see how these things go, not just looking at the tab, because often with some of these really weird ones, people will tab out something that is physically impossible to play. The notes are right, but you can't actually play it. So we want to make sure you actually can play all these as well. So if that means you have to kind of change where you are on the fretboard to hit a certain stretch, or maybe some weird, bizarre chord, there will be a few weird ones, I want you to tab it out in such a way that you are able to play it. So, going through this C chord, so the third interval of C is E. So we have an E on the D string and an E for the high E. So first thing I'm thinking of is, starting from the bottom, going up, come to that E. We just lower that to the next note in key, which is a D. So that becomes open. G stays the same because that's the 5. C stays the same because that's the root note. Now we have this high E string to worry about. Well, we can't drop it down to a D. So, 2 options. 1, just don't play it. However, if you can keep the same amount of strings, in this case 5 strings, do so. But when you're trying to figure out a chord, and it seems like keeping the same number of strings going from the triad to the sus2 or the sus4, if it seems like it'd be too much of a pain in the butt, if it's taking more than a minute to figure out how to do it, forget it. Just make it easy on yourself. Because a lot of the chords, you can keep the same amount of strings. There will be a few you can't, or at least it's damn near impossible. So yeah, if it seems like it'd be too much of a pain in the butt, just go with an easy way for yourself. And then we'll check things as always. So we can use the high E string because the G note's part of the chord, and that's right there. So when I do an open C sus2, I always go for that one. And then and label it. So sus4, we go back to the C chord. Another common mistake people will do when going through these sorts of things is they will properly take the triad, turn it into the sus2, and then they think, okay, let's turn the sus2 into the sus4. No, we don't want to do that because it actually is a little bit more complicated. We want to go the easy way, the simple way. So we go back to the triad, so back to the C chord. So we go back to the same note we just changed, the E note on the D string and then the high E string. Now we just raise it up to the next note in key. So move the E's up to an F. And then we got our C suspended 4. Okay, I'm going to do one other because it's when you deal with open strings for the suspended seconds, we have problems. So E minor is the third chord there. We're in Phrygian mode. So that means we cannot have an E suspended second because that would involve an F sharp. We have an F, so that gives us the E suspended flat second. And we can tell that we're going to have a flat second nice and easy because that flat 2 is right there. So you can just double check the mode information, make sure that we have the intervals we need, or I should say, it'll help you double check how these chords will be named properly. Now, one thing to keep in mind with Guitar Pro, the only chords that will not auto-generate the name we want will be the sus flat 2, sus flat 2 flat 5, and sus sharp 4. So those are the only 3 chords that will not auto-generate the name we want. Sus flat 2, sus flat 2 flat 5, and sus sharp 4. Everything else should auto-generate correct if the notes are there properly. So, E minor, we got a flat third, so we need to find the flat third, which is going to be this open G. So, following the simple idea of just taking the note and lowering it down to the next note in key for the suspended second that's in key, well, we can't because that's going to be way up here on this string. We would need a negative fret, so we don't have those. So what do? So when I am working with something like this, my thought is, again, let's try and keep as many of the same strings as possible. So what can we do with that G string in order to use it? We got to think of, well, what notes are in the E sus flat 2? Obviously an E. No more a G, so that's out. But we got this B note, which is the 5th interval. And we're going to be adding in the F, or replacing the G with the F. So we can use either an E, an F, or a B. So using an E, that's definitely out. I mean, the F would be way up here, so the E would be over here. I got one choice, the B note, which is that 4th fret there. So now we just got a big old E5, because just nothing but E's and B's at this point. So then, again, we try and keep this simple. We need to add in an E, or not an E, an F. We need to change one of the E's to an F, basically. We're not going to change this note, because for right now, we're going to keep the root note as the bass note until we get back to doing any inversion stuff. But right now, for this exercise, this theory work, keep the root note the bass note. So the E stays there. So we just kind of go through the chord one string after the next. There's an E, we're not touching that. That's a B note, leave that alone. That's an E note. Well, can we raise that up a half step? Absolutely. There's our F, there's our E sus flat 2. So again, that's not going to auto-generate what we want, so we type that in, boom, and there we go. So, just fill out what you can. If you have questions with any of the chords you come up with, let me know. Just send over what you got when you have it. And very much appreciate you sending stuff over today. It does help out a lot. It's going to make tomorrow, the start of packing and getting the truck, much easier, so thank you. All right, that is that. So yeah, next week, all good, back to normal, and then I think that covers it. All right, I will see you again in your next video.